Last week we started discussing the Shmona Psukim Shavat Torah, the last 8 Psukim. It's on. The last 8 Psukim in the Torah, so we'll review and then we'll continue. So we mentioned the Gemara Menachas Taf Lamed and the Gemara Baba Basra, the Machlokas in the Gemara on who wrote the last 8 Psukim. There's no machlokas on the first 8, the middle 8, but on the last 8. So why should the last 8 be different? So the Gemara tells us, the Torah tells us, the last 8 psukim is the obituary of Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayam Hashem Moshe Eved Hashem, and therefore the question is, did Moshe write his own obituary? Did Moshe write his own death? So one opinion, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, of course he didn't write his own death. How can he be writing about his own death when he's alive? It's michse kasheker. It's not actual lying, because as we'll see, it could mean he will die, etc. But at least it gives an appearance of falsehood. And Moshe Rabbeinu, the Isha Emes, would not do that. And therefore, it must have been the Yehoshua wrote the last 8 psukim. And Rav Shimon says, what are you talking about? It says, we know we refer to it as Torah's Moshe. To even suggest that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't write the whole Torah, that's heresy. Of course Moshe Rabbeinu wrote even the last 8 psukim. How did he write about his own death? So the Gemara says that Moshe wrote the last 8 psukim differently. We'll get to what differently means in a minute. But Moshe wrote, the Gemara says, B'dema, in simple pshat with tears. So the Gemara writes as follows: by Kol HaTorah Kulo, by the whole Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Moshe Omer V'Kosev. By Kol HaTorah Kulo, God said it over, then Moshe said it over, and then he wrote it down. But the last 8 psukim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Moshe V'Kosev B'dema. So there are 2 differences. Number one is, there wasn't a Moshe Omer first, when he did the last 8 psukim, and also he wrote it differently with Dema. In fact, that's what we pointed out last week. Tosfos quotes that is the minhag among Sofrim based on this Gemara, that before when they write a Sefer Torah, or assumes mezuzahs fill in as well, before they actually write it, they say it over. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Moshe Omer V'Kosev. So that's the last 8 psukim were not Omer V'Kosev. It was this Kosev B'dema. So what does that mean, Kosev B'dema? So Rashi just writes, Lefi Saro, that Moshe Rabbeinu was going to die. No one's happy. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, who, as in the good Chumashim, they have Moshe, that's the thing Rav Chaim Velazhin points out, Moshe, Avraham is like a little psik. It's a little line. Basically there'll be 2 videos based in Shamal, one of what we actually did, and one of what we could have done. And therefore, by Moshe, it's basically the same video. It's like, they have the video for the kids and the same movie's playing. That's how it would be for Moshe, kind of. Avram just pretty close, and hopefully for us as close as possible. But basically, the Moshe Rabbeinu reaches potential. So, and even though he reaches potential, but still, the value of the opportunity to do more mitzvahs. He viewed mitzvahs as opportunities. In fact, that's what the Rav Moshe writes actually in this week's parsha. Vayera, the beginning, we all know Vayera begins, Vayera Hashem, that Avram Avinu, 99-year-old, is recovering from the bris milah. So God makes it very hot outside so people don't bother Avram. However, God sees that it's causing more distress for Avraham not to do hachnosas orchim than it is the pain of the milah. So it says, Avraham is mitzvah, Yom Shishru Milah. So Rav Moshe asked, like, what do you mean mitzvah? It's one thing if he was sitting there in surgery, the people were in front of him, and he couldn't do it because he was recovering, but there was no one there. It's like, so what was his mitzvah about? So that's the same yisod that like Moshe Rabbeinu. Also, Moshe Rabbeinu mitzvah, he couldn't to go into Eretz Yisrael and fulfill the mitzvahs to his words. What are you getting all worked up about? You're in Toronto, you're in LA, there is no mitzvahs. No, but the attitude of always wanting to put yourself in a situation where you can do mitzvahs, so that's a Rashi writes, the Rero of Sar, that's why it caused them to cry and stuff, because he realized the opportunities are no longer there. And the Maharsha explains, he's really dealing with the issue, it sounds more derech drush, but he's dealing with the issue of the Miksei Kashikra, Moshe Ish Emes, how could it be? So he says two things. One that, as I mentioned, is usually taken out of context, that the Moshe Rabbeinu, he didn't say it. That's why it says Moshe, not Omer B'Kosei, Moshe Kosei B'Demas. He didn't want to say a lie. So people like quoting the Maharsha, therefore I could write lies as long as I don't say them. But that's not what the Maharsha is talking about. I wanted to say Trish, but the Gemara is not talking about lying. It's Miksei Kashikra, and he's saying that Moshe didn't want to say it, and therefore, and he wrote it with tears. How does writing with tears help and not ink? Because al pi halacha, it's not considered a ksiva on Shabbos, unless you have a ksiva which is kaima. It's not labeled a ksiva. In Hilchos Gittin or any type of legal document, you have to write something that's miskayim. That's why the doctors have those pens, but sometimes in order to minimize. So therefore, the Maharsha says he didn't say it. And he didn't write it either. Al pi halach, it's not considered ksiva. Of course, I asked, how is it a kosher sefer Torah? If not, but I will get, maybe we'll have to wait for when we get the Gra to explain why it is a kosher sefer Torah. And then, because that's what they say. So that's the Maharsha, and the Vilna Gaon has a famous explanation that Elu v'Elu divrei Elokim chayim. What do you mean? Moshe wrote it, Yoshua wrote it. They're both right. Because we know, how could they both be right? So the Gra explains, based on a Ramban, the Ramban in the beginning of Bereshit and the Hakdama, he says the whole Torah is Shmos of Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, and that's why, and that's what the Vilna Gaon asked, like, what do you mean? He says, what do you mean Miksei Kashikra? The whole Torah is Miksei Kashikra. As we all know, he looked at the Torah and he created the world. So what do you mean? The Lech Lecha or Avram with the angels, assuming according to the Rambam it never happened, it's just a dream, but according to Moshe, like, what do you mean? The whole Torah is Miksei Kashikra. So he says, no, there's a Torah in a pristine state, the Ramban, that everything is Shmos of Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's one long, if you have the code, you can figure out exactly what the Torah is saying. It wasn't until whether it was all in Har Sinai, when he walked along, but whenever it happened, when he gave over the Torah to Moshe in Har Sinai, he decoded it. And therefore we put in what Bereshis, Barokim, Lech Lecha, Vayera, all those words that we can understand. So he points out, the Vilna Gaon, it's not kasa b'dema as in tears, but from the word meduma, a mixture, like Trum and Chuin get mixed in. That Moshe wrote the whole Torah. Well, the whole Torah, I guess, he wrote the whole Torah. He was able to write in regular form. He got the pristine form. He wrote it in regular form. At the last day Psukim, when it was talking about Vayama Shal Moshe, he never wrote it. He just wrote Shmos of Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He kept the original form of the Torah, and therefore, so he wrote the Torah, but he wasn't involved in Miksei Kashikra. And after Moshe Rabbeinu died, so then Yoshua came along, and he wrote over the Torah the way we know it is Moshe's obituary. So therefore, he says, Elu v'Elu, Moshe did write the whole Torah, and on the other hand, Yoshua also wrote the last day Psukim. He wrote over, however, the words, maybe the letters are the same, whatever the change entails, Yoshua made it readable. Moshe gave him over the code, and therefore he was able to do it. So therefore, that's how the Vilna Gaon explains, Elu v'Elu, both Moshe and Yoshua wrote. So those are different interpretations of the Machloket in the Gemara and the last Shmot of Psukim. And then we said this isn't just a hypothetical discussion, but this discussion is halach l'maisa. These 8 Psukim in the Torah are different. Al pi halacha. What it means al pi halacha, there are 5 different explanations, but whatever it means, the Gemara calls it Yachid Korei Osam. These last 8 Psukim are different than the rest of the Torah, a Yachid Korei Osam. So what does that mean? Yachid Korei Osam. So we have 5 schools of thought. We have Rashi that says Yachid Korei Osam. What does the Gemara mean? It means there's no hasafa. So we know if you want for Chassan Torah, you want to make a lot of money, maybe split it up, you can't do it. You got to read all those 8 psukim, have to be done straight. You can't make a hafsaka like the Gemara in Megillah, Ein Mafsikim Makolos, for a different reason. Neither you want to make a bracha on prinios, or you don't want to stop, interrupt God while He's giving you musr. But the same concept, it can't be normally with masik. By Kol Torah Kul, we have Osafas. However, by the last day psukim, no Osafas. That's how Rashi learns. That's what it means. Yachid, one person, you can't have 2 people or 3 people. You can't split it up among many people. Only one person has to read the last day psukim. Tosas quotes Rabbi Aaron Selevan, who many don't like. He says, Yachid means, normally we have a Baal Koreh. Well, even though that wasn't the original institution, there are many differences between the original institution and what we have it today. The Gemara Megillah, over there, the 3rd parak, goes through the different things. So one thing is, there used to be the one who got called up for the Aliyah, he read it. And that's why you had to show up and be prepared. I guess after a while, people were walking out before laning or coming after, and they caught on that people don't want to prepare the laning, so therefore they instituted a Baal Koreh. And therefore one person reads. So therefore, poskim even say today it's inappropriate that you shouldn't. If you get called up and know the Aliyah, you shouldn't read because you're embarrassing. It looks like you're showing off. It looks like you'll be motzi laz and the people who are coming up who didn't lane. Even though there is a minhag among some Sephardi shults, apparently I haven't been in it, but people tell me some minhag among the Sephardim is they do that. But that's okay if the shul does it, everyone does it. But I've seen people where they get up and they actually start laning. Many poskim are against that.
People do it on Simchas Torah very frequently, but there's no. Right? They lean their own aliyah.
Oh, you mean when they put it in the Hosafish, you mean, or anytime?
Yeah.
So maybe, at least on Simchas Torah, as long as it's not, as long as it's not the last day of Pesach, which is not, right, there's room on Simchas Torah, the whole thing is, is different, so therefore.
He's going to say just the opposite, the Chassan Torah should lane.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. So but he's saying.
He's saying the one again. Through it once.
You
what I do is because we do lean also on this Armenian. But I'll say, okay, listen, whoever the Bakar, I'll go through the whole series.
Oh, you go 3 to 1. Oh, you can even out getting an aliyah. Yeah. I said, I said this. Now that where I am, I'm the Baal Koreh anyway. So if I can fulfill all the shittas. So, but that's what he writes. Yachid Koreh some no Baal Koreh. You got to do it yourself. And therefore, that's how. And it's difficult because what I mean, the minhag was that's the way it always was. So why is it? Now it seems like a little of a chiddush, but it doesn't make sense. That's why many reject Rabbi Aaron Selevan for that reason. There are other differences. I say used to be apparently the mafter got their own. Like you left over 3 or 4 psukim at the end that you didn't read. Now we read over mafter, and when they put the kaddish, so there are many differences. So. In terms of getting aliyahs, one person, everyone, but that's what the way Rabbi Aaron Selevan writes. The Mordechai, he writes the Rav, the Talmud Chacham of the shul, he should get the aliyah. That's what it means. Yachid, the Hey Ayidiyah, the Yachid, he should get Chassan Torah. Hence, and we'll come back to that, but we'll have to explain. That explains the minhag why the Rabbanim get Chassan Torah. But I want to understand why some shuls.
But there was no Hey, right?
Right, no, I'm just saying Hashishi.
I'm just saying it should have been.
Yeah.
Should have been higher.
Right. So that's the Mordechai. Yeah. I'm going to get to, some have a minhag to give the Rav from Bereshit, so maybe I'll give a possible explanation why, based after we go through a couple of the Mefarshim on another area. So that's the Mordechai. Yachid Korah, the Rav of the Shul, the Talmud Chacham gets it. The 4th explanation is the Rashash. He says, now we know the halacha is you could have Osafis, on Shabbos. Maker then we pass like that every Shabbos, and really if you run out of space, you could just repeat. You could go over like we do on Simchas Torah. You could do all year round. But the minhag is we don't usually have. There's enough to give it. The Vilna Gaon's minhag looks very good. That's it, 7, and that's it. But really, you can repeat as much as you want. However, comes the Rashash and says, that's what you're doing, Simchas Torah, but Yachid Koreh Sab Yachid, you only can read it once. You can't go back and repeat it. So, by the rest of the Torah, you always go back and read over the Aliyah again. But the Yachid Koreh Sab, the Rashash says, you only can read it once, you cannot go back and read it over again.
But isn't that what we do?
The what?
We
No, we don't do that. Right. We stop at Ma'ona, we only do up to... Through Chavishi, we read up until Shishi, we just read depending how many people you have in the shul. But he's saying the last 8 psukim you can't repeat.
Okay.
For the whole, that's why it's different. Yachid once as opposed to many times. And probably the most famous shita is the Shita Harambam, Shita number 5, that Yachid Koros, that means Yachid, you don't need a minyan. Yachid in contrast to Tzibor. That for the last 8 psukim, an individual can read the last 8 psukim by themselves. They do not need a minyan. That's what the Rambam writes. And the Ravid screams Chai v'Kayim at the Rambam. What are you talking about? Ech ha-minyan halach. Where did the minyan go? Of course, the Ravid was such a kadosh, he didn't realize that it's Simchas Torah and people are making kids. We all know where they are. Just show up in any shul, you know where everyone is. So what was the Ravid asking? So many of the Achronim say that wasn't the Ravid's question. The Ravid knew people were out for Kiddush. Everyone knows about the Kiddush Club on Simchas Torah all year round, but certainly Simchas Torah. So what was the Ravid's question?
Is this question also dependent on 3 years versus 1 year cycle? Or love? I mean, because you're asking the question as if we finish it in a 1 year cycle. Yochid Koro Sam.
Well, even if it's a 3 year...
It wouldn't fall in Simchas Torah.
No, but the question is maybe that'd be a good question. Historically, what happened could be maybe they could have had a separate takana to read. The question if they did that they read whether it's the last 8 psukim to read from. Like we have, let's say, the kasha is we have the 4 parashas. We have takanas Ezra to read the Tocha before Rosh Hashanah, before Shavuot. So the kasha is, like, what did they do in the 3 years? Like now we always, Kisavo falls out that, before Rosh Hashanah, and Bechukosai comes out before Shavuot. So what did they do? So Achronim answer, in that case, no, there was a special takanas Ezra. Even in that, you didn't read the whole Kisavo, but you read the Tocha. So it's a good question. Maybe all the time, even before they finished, that's a question mark, I don't know, but even if they did, perhaps maybe there was a special takana that just read the last 8 psukim or the last... Yeah, I'm saying I'm not sure. It's a good historically, I'm not sure.
Well, first question is by the time the Gemara was written, were they still doing a 3 year cycle? Which is not at all clear, I don't think.
Right, that's the whole thing, because Tosafot talks about...
The Gemara talks about,
The Gemara Megillah talks about what half Torah do you read on Simchas Torah. So the Gemara gives one half Torah, and then Tosafot quoting thing from Haigon, then you read from another one. So
he says you read from Yoshua. The other one was that you read from Shlomo.
Yes, right. So therefore, some say that was when they finished the cycle. So that's what he said. You continue now with Yoshua, but that's what some say.
Because it doesn't usually follow. Because usually a mafter follows the Haftorah follows the theme of the mafter.
Right.
And here the Haftorah follows the theme of the...
And that gets into the whole nature of Shemini Atzeres, in terms of what's the nature of the Kriya.
Right.
And that's why it's different over there. So either way, that's what what kind of question, we're assuming the Ravid knew everyone's outside making Kiddush. So what is the Ravid's question when he says to the Rambam, where did the minyan go? So the Mishnah, Shayvitz, Ravzolti, others bring down...
Yeah, I don't understand what his question is. I mean,
that's I don't either, but go on. His question is simple. People misunderstand. People think the question is, it's a question, what's the Rambam talking about, Yachid Korah or something? Like all of a sudden the minyan walks out in the middle of the Kriya?
But that's a good question.
What do you mean, what's the question? You're saying they do or they don't? Well, you think it's a good question? You think the Ravid is a good question on the Rambam?
Yeah, it's a good question. How can you not just walk out of shul?
Yeah, okay, no. But is that what the Rambam means? We have to... That's what if you learn the question right, you're assuming that's what the Rambam's saying. When they explain it.
But doesn't that go back to basics? I mean, whether the chiyuv of laning is one on the tzibor, or whether there's a chiyuv to be laned on Shabbos. But lav dafka is there a minyan if you don't have.
Right, Pashas the Chovas tzibor. Right, that's what we discussed last week. Right. Pashas the Chovas tzibor. So it's difficult anyway. Why should a yachid? It seems to be a rishus yachid koriyah because we don't see it. It must be, obviously it must be a separate takana because it's a separate takana because obviously you don't have to.
But that question last week, the things that focus on Yaakov would be more significant.
Looks like my daughter.
You follow each psukim seem to be like lower kedusha.
From New
It's
York.
written by Yeshua or something, or like, you know, so if they say Yachid Korno, so it's like, well, Tzibur doesn't have to read it at all. It's just,
No, exactly right. So
you say Psukim are more important because.
no, that's what we're gonna get. No, so I'm saying we'll be able to answer more when I finish this year. We're gonna explain that more. But you're right. It's a difficult. What does that mean? He's taking. It's an option. Like it's a good. So you know, maybe it's a separate takana. So that's what we have to understand what he means. So what the Achronim say is they explain the Ravid's question totally different. Of course, that wasn't the question because it can't mean that. Because we have another halacha, is a concept, you know, a davar shebekdusha, which is always a very hard term to define, but kadosh, kedusha, responsive, whatever a davar shebekdusha is, it requires a minyan. It requires, you know, kadosh, kedusha, you need 10 men. So they point out what happens. There's a halacha, not well known, or well known that if you start with 10 in the beginning of davar shebekdusha. So even if some people walk out of the room, you can finish doing what you're doing. So there's a machlokas rishonim in terms of how many have to be left. Do you still need 6? Like how many can walk out? Could you be left with 1 or 2, or do you have to have at least? So within that you have a machlokas in the rishonim, but everyone agrees that's halacha that even though you have to start with 10, you don't necessarily have to finish with 10. So that's what they said. This is the Ravid's question. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean Yachid Korah Asam? They walked out. That's true for Kol HaTorah. This is Vayera. The whole Torah, as long as you start that aliyah with an minyan, so even if they walk in the middle, you can still finish reading. So what's the Rambam? What's the chiddush of the Rambam? So what the Rav is asking, where did the din of Tzibor go? It's not where did the Tzibor go. We know this is true by Kol HaTorah Kula. As long as you start with the minyan, even if people walk out in the middle, let's say you only had 10 and you're down to 6, you can do it by any parsha. So what is the Rambam's chiddush here of that's the Ravid's question on the Rambam. The din tzibor, in other words, I don't care what the people want, but it's still a din of a tzibor, because Allah as long as you started with the tzibor, you have a din tzibor. So that's what his question is. What do you mean yachid? Even if you only have a yachid, it's still considered a tzibor. Just like for the rest of the Torah, when you start reading, even if it's lechuchar, you can finish reading. That's the Ravid's question on the Rambam. Where did the din tzibor go? It's still, even though it's true, even if people physically left, but that's the halacha of a davar shebekdusha. As long as you started with 10, you could finish without 10.
Why can't he mean? Maybe the Rambam means they could start with just 1.
Right. That's.
I don't understand why. Is that an obvious answer?
It's a problematic answer because of Rabbi Hach's question. Why can you do it with only 1?
But but that's the original question that he was asking. So he said, where did the minion go? You can't start with 1.
Well,
that was the reason. So I don't understand.
And
that was the original question. Where did your minion go that you can't start with 1? Why do you have to come to the answer? Because the people left. That's not the original.
Because it's hard to understand the Rambam that way.
No, the Rav is the one who said the Echad. But also the question is, what do you mean? Did they start reading from Ma'ona? Like what exactly happened? Were they reading also in the last day Psukim everyone took off? Or was the meaning maybe originally only from the last, like I'm not 100% clear what the facts are in terms of, were they just reading the last day Psukim? Was that, or is it from Shishi? That depends on our question about whether they read the whole, you know, when we were already on a 1-year cycle where everyone, you were reading the whole Torah or before. But the Ravid's question, right, you could say that, but that's the whole problem, is the Chovas at Tzibor, so that's why they don't suggest that. No, it's a part. I said you could say that, like I would say, maybe it was special, maybe that's the Chiddush of the Rambam, that the last 8 psukim was not included in the midst, you know, the special time. Why were the 8 psukim different? A special halacha, which we'll get into. No, that's a possible answer. But but they're explaining the Ravid is asking a different question. What do you mean Yachid Korah? The Yachid Korah is on for the whole Torah. But it's a din tzibor, that even if the tzibor walked out, you still could continue laning. So someone suggests perhaps maybe the chiddush of the Rambam is by the whole Torah you have to have at least 6 remaining. But the chiddush of the Rambam is even if you only have 3 left or 2 left, so that you could finish the last 8 psukim.
It should be only 1 left.
Right, even 1 left. And Yachid, right. But anything less than anything, you know, in fact, as Rabbi Kiva Eger raises a similar issue. So people assume Every davar shebekadusha needs 10. That is true. But people make a mistake. They assume they work it backwards. If it needs a minyan, then they assume it's a davar shebekadusha. That isn't always true. The Gemara talks about it's not covered to, let's say, read the Torah not in front of 10 people. So Rabbi Eger clears the question. He says, what's pshat in this halacha? It's only if you started with a minyan, you can continue without a minyan. This is pshat that the chiyuv is just at the beginning. You need the minyan, is that it? But I don't need a minyan for the rest? Oh no. Really, I need the minyan for everything. But the din is if I have 6 people, Ruba Kukulo, it's like the minyan never left. My nafkamina. This is the Machokas Rishonim. If it's that basically only the beginning needs a minyan, so then I can have one guy left at the end as long as. But if the din is I really need a minyan for everything, then I only need 6. That's why Rabbi Eger clears on this issue. That's according to the Rambam. So perhaps that this is different, that you could even have less people. However, perhaps it's another way of answering it. That really maybe Kriyas HaTorah, number one, Kriyas HaTorah isn't a davar shebekadusha. Well, what is a davar shebekadusha is a Baruch Hu before. That's why Mikra Din, you're supposed to stand for the Baruch Hu and that. But really, Mikra Din, we paskin, you don't have to stand during Kriyas HaTorah. And in fact, it's just the Ramah quotes the Baram Rinberg, it's covered HaTorah, but really make Kriyas HaTorah isn't a davar shebekadusha. So why do we need So why do we need a minyan for?
It's 2 different mamorim. One says davar shebekdusha ba'amida, and another says davar shebekdusha b'minyan. So there seems to be different levels of davar shebekdusha, or 2 different chalosim of what is davar shebekdusha.
No, so based on what you're saying, no, that's why one could argue Kriyas HaTorah isn't a davar kedusha. You want to say it's a lower level davar kedusha.
It has to be because
you don't have to stand.
I don't know if it's lower level but different. It's different. It's not the same.
Yeah. So the Rav.
It's not the same.
Yes. So the Rav.
Chazor Sashatz. Although I know some do stand, but it's not the same chiyuv of standing as for kedusha. And the Sfardim don't stand for kaddish either. So davar shebekdusha.
Right, but
it seems to be there's different types of davar.
Right, but also in terms of Amida seems to be a different issue, meaning the real, because some even say for Kaddish, as long as it depends whatever you're doing, like you continue. Right, so implying that the main issue of Davar Kedusha is the 10. Amida, maybe that's just a Hiddur or an Inyan. In other words, it seems from the Gemaras and the Poskim, they seem to focus, you're saying it's true, there is a din of Amida, but that seems to be more secondary to davar. The main issue of davar shebekadusha seems to be whether you could say it or not. Then standing, sitting, then you get into a chatchil or a hiddur. But the ikar of davar seems to be whether you need a minyan or not. But it is true. They do say, the midah which puts Kriyas HaTorah in question, which fits in well to Rav Soloveitchik. The Rav claims Kriyas HaTorah isn't a davar shebekadusha. So why do we need a minyan? He says for a totally different reason, nothing to do with the fact that it's a davar shebekadusha. You know why you need a minyan for Kriyas HaTorah? Because Kriyas HaTorah, he says, is a reenactment of Maimer Har Sinai. It's like the Ramban writes, Yishamer, and don't forget, you have a special chiyuv, a mitzvah to always remember Maimer Har Sinai. So basically, when we read the Torah, it's a zeichel kabbalas Har Sinai. In fact, speaking of Amida, that's the whole issue the Rav discussed about standing for the Aseret HaDibros. So because our minig is that we stand for the Aseret HaDibros.
And for the Shira.
Right, Shira, but that's for a different reason, right. Shira is more problematic when we do it. But assuming it's a problem. I stand the whole time, so I don't have any issues. But assuming you sit and stand up, but the minig is for the Shira also, we'll get to that. But by Kriyas HaTorah, so the minig is that we stand, yet the Rambam makes no mention of standing. In fact, the Rambam writes, it's apikarsis to stand up. In fact, no mention. He speaks very strongly about not standing up for the Aseret HaDibros. It's a heresy. He's saying the 10 Commandments are more important than the rest of the Torah. So, and the minig, I guess, in different Sephardi shul, maybe they sit even. So the question is, how do we reconcile our minig, Yisrael, of standing with the minig with the Rambam? So maybe you don't. But so this some answer Rav Haigon. Rav Haigon's you saw that Aseret HaDibros, 6 plus 1 plus 3. It's not the 10 Commandments, as always said. It's the Aseret HaDibros, the 10 sayings, the 10 principles. As Rav Sajigo wrote a book, a sefer on it, that you can figure out all 600. If you go deep enough, I'm sure some are more of a push than others. If you go deep enough, you can find all the 613 mitzvahs in the 10. So really, you're right. If you're standing because you're saying it's more important, then that's kfira. But if you're standing as a representative quality, that's why it's different. But the Rav had a different shot. The Rav said to reconcile the Rambam with the Minagolim, he says we read Kriyas Torah a couple of times during the year. So he claimed, I think he quotes the Magen Avram, but an interesting minhag that when we read it in Parashas Yisro and in Parashas Meschanan, they sit. But when they read it on Shavuos, they say that's not our minhag is we stand off. But I think the Magen Avram quotes the minhag that when they read Yisro Veschanan they sat, but they read it at Shavuos they stood. To the Rav explain what's the love. This is at Shita. He said because on Parashas Yisro Veschanan you're reading it for Torah's Parashat Shavua. So you have no right to single it out more than any other the parashas. But on Shavuos, while we're reading it specific, Zecher, the Kabbalah Torah Misinai. So the Rav uses that Yisod, but the whole time he points out it seems to fit in well with that minhag. So the Rav claims like this, if you look at the Rambam, he never makes, we know that our minhag is we read the Aseret HaDibros Tam Elyon. There's Tam Tachton and Tam Elyon. There are other differences, but the basic difference is, do you read it by commandments or do you read it by psukim? And because there are 3 psukim in one pasuk, the 3 commandments in one pasuk, and you have 3 verses. So how do you read it? So Tam Tachta means I read it normally. Tam Elyon I read it by commandment. So the Rav wants to say like this: our minhag is we read it Tam Elyon. So with Dafka, even Yisro Veschanan. So with that we're reading a different time to show it's a different type. It's not the regular kriya, and we're standing for different reasons. But when it comes to the Rambam makes no mention of Tam Elyon. Doesn't exist according to the Rambam. He always read a Tam Tachton. So therefore the Rav said that's why the Rambam says it's apikarsis, because how could you go ahead and give more credence to these parashas? But if you're reading it, and that's perhaps the minhag of the Shira, you're reading it in a different nusach, so then whatever the reason is, but you show you're taking out of the normal Parashat Shavua, you're reading it for some other reason, and perhaps that's why it's less of an issue, it's less offensive to the Rambam or whoever. But our minhag never, but the Yisod of Shavuos is Zeichel Kabbalah Har Sinai, and the Rav says it by the whole Kriyas Torah. And therefore that's the pshat. The reason why we need a minyan is because we need 10 people, not because it's a Davish of a Kedusha, because that's the way Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Torah. He taught it Barabim to Klal Yisrael. And he says that's the pshat the Rav. This is pshat in the Rambam. Why is the last 8 psukim Yachid Koreosam? Because how you talking that Moshe Rabbeinu publicly was speaking about his death, he was reading how great he was, his obituary? I think not. So for the whole Torah Kula, as the Gemara says, the Kadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Moshe Omer v'Kosev. Kadosh Baruch Hu said it over, then Moshe said it over to Klal Yisrael, and then he wrote it down. But the last 8 psukim is Moshe of Kosev b'Dema. Apparently the Rav says he went around privately, and he went ahead to teach people privately on an individual basis. So that's the pshat. We stand on the reason why we need a minyan for Kriyat Torah is because Zeichel Kabbalah Tarsina, the way Moshe gave the Torah over. So Yachid Korosam, it's not a punishment, that's a natural consequence. There was no, Moshe Rabbeinu did not publicly teach the last 8 psukim. That's what the Rambam is getting at in Yachid Korosam. It's nothing to do with Dorish Kedusha. The reason why we need a minyan is because it's Zeichel Kabbalah Tarsina, and since the last 8 psukim were not given publicly, hence that's the pshat in the Rav. That's what the Rav explains the sheet of the Rambam.
Explain again. Why do we say that Moshe wouldn't have taught it?
No, I'm saying
to the group.
Because why? Because
besides that one pasuk, I mean, there's still 7 other psukim. He would have trouble saying the cholosos, amosim.
No, but then he says, number one is, but he talks about then how everyone was crying over him and mourning, and then I'm just saying, Is room to, I mean, the Rav assume, I understand, I think logically, it makes sense that when, you're not really teaching your whole obituary publicly, I don't think he's saying it factually, I think he's saying he thinks that's the pshat in the Rambam, and to me it makes sense that that's something that you could argue wouldn't be taught, he can't say if Torah is Vada, but he's giving
so why is so Kriyas Torah isn't the Davar Shebekdusha? Fine, so I understand why you have to have.
And hence we don't stand either.
Why do you need 10 people for Haftarah then?
Maybe for
it's not Davar Shebekdusha, and it's not.
Okay, so that could be the Din D'Rabbanan, and they were saking to have to. That gets into also why, historically speaking, when they couldn't read the Torah, so they instituted the Haftarah. Even though halakha we don't paskin that way, that even if you're in a hotel and you don't have you don't read the Haftarah. You always can read the Haftarah with the bracha. So you're right. You wouldn't, but I guess that was the takana ke'ein kriyas Torah. But you're right. If you don't need it for kriyas Torah, but the minhag is we still do it. But you're right. Strictly speaking, we wouldn't need one. But it seems to be this. They took they just extended the takana from. But you're right. It's more problematic if you say like the Rav. You just have to push it more to say Haftarah also. It's a zeichel, a kabbalah, but right, it's a little more difficult, but...
The Sheva Brachos, the Birkas Chasanim, is only B'minyan, and yet nobody is B'amido.
That's what I'm saying, I think the main issue of first of all, if you're saying, number one, is it a Davar Shebekdusha or not? The fact that you need a minyan, isn't that this week's next week's parasha, by Yavarchu, Tosis, and Ksuvis over there, the source for... That's B'Yachas Harrison, I think he brings down about but right, but
Rus, though.
Yeah, Rus, but also he quotes both, and he quotes by is it Rus or they quote by Rivka, one in Tosas over there in Subis. Yeah. No, by Yavarchu as Rivka, that's what they say. That's B'Yachas Harrison. That's the source. I think Tosas brings down for B'Yachas Harrison.
Right, but there's no minion there.
Oh, right.
But in Rus, you have.
Oh, to have a sorry, you mean? For a sorry is Rus, right? Yeah, so. Again, does anyone say that the Birkat Eretz and the Davar Shebekdusha? I don't know. Again, because the fact we said the fact you need 10 doesn't make it a Davar, so we have to answer that.
No, for Birkat Eretz you don't need a minyan, but for Birkat Chasanim you need.
No, but the question is why. So it's not necessarily say a Davar Shebekdusha. So I'm saying if you argue Davar Shebekdusha, which is difficult, I don't know why it would be, then explain. But the question is, so why do we need a minyan? Then we have to come up with an answer. Of why by Chassan Dom Lamelech, you have to come up with some answer about why we need a minyan, but that what doesn't fundamentally tell us anything about the Davar Shebekdusha. As I said, Amida seems to be secondary to the issue in terms of the poskim always seem to be dealing with the minyan part. It's I said there is an Amida, but it doesn't seem to be it's like with brachas. We have a halacha. You're supposed to make a birkas a mitzvah Amida. But I don't know if it's the same, that's why we learned out by Sfira Omer, Bakama, but again, but it's not this, if you don't say, it's not like you're not Yotzei the bracha, so I'm not sure if it's the same, so I don't know if anyone says standing is Likuva by all those things, even if you didn't stand for Kedusha, I wouldn't say you're not Yotzei, so, it seems to be more of, maybe if it's a Dargusha, out of respect, maybe you should stand, but not so much that that's
it's also Birkas Hadah, isn't it?
Birkas Hadah is on...
No, Birkas Hadah.
The Sheva Brachos is called Birkas Chasanim.
Yeah, but are they Birkas Hadah or are they...
No, the Birkas Ersin. You're talking about the Birkas Brachos, the Sheva Brachos?
Sheva Brachos is B'minyan.
Yeah.
Right.
Not right.
And those are Birkas But there, that's a machlokas.
Yeah, because there is a machlokas, Rambam Rush.
There's a machlokas,
yeah.
But the Sheva Brachos are Birkas Hadah, I would think.
Yeah,
and all the Birkas Hadah have to be b'minyan.
You mean right? You're saying it's a regular din of Birkas Sheva Hadah. Yeah. That's why when you're doing a suda like the Tzir writes by a Suda's Hadah, why does the Torah give us so much food to eat? Like from the karbanos, it's much more than usual. The point is, in the Tzir writes in the Vayikra or Tzav,
to share it.
The point is when you have so that makes sense. It's the Birkas Sheva Hadah. That's why you need 10. Because you have to you have something to share. You have to share it publicly. Yeah, that's
because the Sheva Brachos is really 9 brachos. There's 9.
7 plus the 2.
Because the short bracha is also a bracha, like in the Shemona Esrei, 18 Many of them are short brachas. So it's really 9, but the real name is Birkas Chosanim.
Right. You got a question?
So on a regular Shabbos, if you don't have a Chumash, could you take a Sefer Torah and read the Pasha from that by
You mean
yourself?
like you're home? Yeah. I mean, you could take out a Sefer Torah anytime and learn from it. In fact, that was always the practice. Today, with the advent of the printing press, it's just much easier. Most people don't have a Sefer Torah in their home, but you could take out a Sefer Torah to learn from anytime.
So on Shabbos, so you have to have a minyan to learn from the Torah?
Right, well, no, the point being is if you don't have a minyan, there's no difference if you learn from a Sefer Torah or Chumash. In other words, it's not Kriyas Torah. You're not gaining anything.
Well, the brachos is different.
No, there are no brachas, I'm saying. What's different?
You can't have the brachos.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't, whether you have 9 people and you're reading from a Sefer Torah or reading from a Chumash, it's the same because you can't make the brachas.
So it's the brachas that's the difference?
Yeah, it's the brachas
So
that...
if you by yourself, you can't make the bracha.
Right.
And according to the Rambam, if you by yourself, you could make the bracha for the last 8 psukim.
Well, Yochid Korah, according to, depending what pshat we're taking, yeah. Whether you have to start, depending on which pshat, whether you have to start off with 10, or maybe according to the Rav, you wouldn't need it. Depending which pshat we're taking in the Rambam, minimally, making a bracha, that's already not so pashut. Maybe yes, maybe no. You could definitely read it without,
No, read it would be easy,
Yeah.
because you could do that on any day. So you'd have to say that.
But the chiddush is that you yotze by reading it. Reading it any week, it's like reading. You're not accomplishing. It's no different than reading from a chumash. According to the Rambam, if I still have to read it from the Sefer Torah, Pashas Yachid Korah. If it's the chiddush of the Rambam, it's a regular din of Sefer Torah, everything except you don't need the minyan. So for the Rambam, the last 8 psukim, even if I was alone and I read the Sefer Torah, then it's okay. But for the rest of the Torah, it wouldn't help me. I could read it by myself. I wouldn't be getting the mitzvah of Kriyas Torah.
Without the bracha.
Right. Well, not so much. Forget about the bracha. If you have, I was thinking, let's say you have 10 people and you don't make the brachas, and you read it. So, Pashas Yotze. It's not the brachas are only kuv in reading. As I said, you need 10 people. So if you make the bracha, obviously you should make the brachas. But I'm saying I don't think anyone would say if you just got up. You had a tzibra, you just read, no one could read, no one knew how to read, they didn't know how to make brachas. I don't think anyone would say you're not Yotzei Kriyas Torah. We don't make a bracha unless you have 10, but doesn't mean it's not an obstacle, it's a separate mitzvah than Kriyas Torah. That's, I'll cover that Torah, but it's not, you could fulfill your mitzvah Kriyas Torah without reading the brachas. It's like I could fulfill my mitzvah tefillin without making the brachas, it's just not the way it was set up.
If a person...
I still don't understand the difference. So then, what's the chiddush that he's making then? Because if you can...
No, the chiddush is, let's say, the last 8 psukim of Vayera,
yeah.
I walked out, and I took out a Sefer Torah myself and read. So according to the Rambam, I have to fulfill my mitzvah of Kriyas Torah, because I didn't hear the last 8 psukim with a minyan. But if I did that on the last 8 Torah, then I am Yotzei. You can't just walk out in the last 8 psukim this week and take out a Sefer Torah and read it. Of course, if you heard it, you can't.
So you have to hear it with the minyan, even if there's no bracha.
Yeah, the bracha is.
I see.
I said bracha is more of a simon. You have it's not the. If you have a minyan, you have to make a bracha, but that's not the. It's not that it's an obstacle in performing.
I got it now.
Right.
If you find
the key of Kriyas Torah, like this week, when you fill the mitzvah of Kriyas Torah, not the whole parsha for a year. That just happens to be
right. It gets into right. Assuming whatever the chiyuv is. Right. I was just assuming you had to read the whole parsha. I was just giving an example. Right. Exactly. What's considered enough? Right. What's considered enough? What isn't? Yeah.
One of these 8 psukim ever chiyuv to read.
Yeah. So maybe 10 psukim is enough to read. Whatever. Right. But the point is, whatever you need a minyan for. Yeah. So that's what.
But those 8 psukim, like the last 8 psukim, was there a chiyuv that specifically read those 8?
Yeah, I'm saying unless there was a special takana on Simchas Torah, right?
You don't see that.
No,
Read takana on Simchas Torah.
No, I'm saying there's a. No, we don't see it. Yeah, no, I'm saying whenever, because obviously the Gemara is talking about Yachid Korah, so wherever you're going to read that, so maybe there's a special takana on those last 8 psukim. I can find No, right, we don't see it. I'm just saying based on what they're saying. I'm not sure where they're getting it from. But I'm just saying is you're right. But
if you find yourself without a minion on a Shabbos, is there any point to reading the parsha?
I mean, I'll probably shtay mikra echad tar.
No. I'm talking about just the time it's a chiyuv of Kriyas Torah.
You mean you just like you're davening at home that day, like whatever?
You're away, whatever the circumstance.
Either way, you don't have a minion.
No minion, no sefer.
Yeah, so Pashas there's no minion.
There's no minion.
No, it's a chovas at Tzibor. Rav Chaim is a strange Rav Chaim shita based on Ramban that he was machbid not to make sure his trips he didn't go on Monday and Thursday. But it was just a chumrah he didn't want to miss. But probably the Pashas people claim he held it was a chovas hayacha, which is but Pashas is no Indian in terms of it's a chovas at Tzibor. In fact, the question is, in fact, you probably wouldn't even have to make it up. Let's say for instance, you didn't go to shul, you were sick one week, and you show up, and it's the next parsha. You have no chiyuv even to make up the last parsha. But it's interesting too. I think the Chasam Sofer, others right. Let's say it happened during the Crusades or any other time where they went to shul and then they saw the Crusades whoever coming, so they actually were together and didn't have time to lay, and they took off. So the next week, the emperor didn't have a chiyuv because it was a chovas sibor. So then maybe next week they had to make up the next two. That's where it came up. Like the Chaz is, I think, when he was in jail or something. So we have a lot. We never read 3 parshios because of Tircha Tzibor. I think the Chaz one time was in jail for 2 weeks, and when he came back, I think or maybe he asked them, and the people said okay. But I think he made up a parsha. That'd be the example. If you're actually if you're actually in shul and then you leave before, maybe you became chayiv and now you're not fulfilling it. But Pashas, you didn't go, you never had a chiyuv.
There's no chovas hayach.
Right. Right. That's the difference to Parsha Zachar, or other things. Maybe that's a chovas hayach. But in terms of Razi.
If it's a chovas tzibor, then why does these last 8 psukim for the yachid matter? Because we don't have to say it anyways.
That's right. That's what we raised. That's the difficulty. In terms, where's it come from in terms of...
But what's he fulfilling?
There's no hope.
No, right. That's a good kasha. We didn't have an answer for. No, you're right. But I'm saying whatever it is, obviously, because the Gemara is talking about it. I still have to read. The Gemara says Yachid Koreh or something. The Gemara, it's not. That is giving. The Rambam is just explaining what he thinks. Trying to, we can just reject the Rambam and that's it. See, Yachid Koreh stuff exists. The question is what it means. So you're right. So it could be maybe it doesn't make sense with the Rambam because we assume Kriyas goes to Chovas at Tzibor. The whole thing, unless you get into it, you started off with the Tzibor.
Right,
that's what we answered. That if you
started with the Tzibor, then you left with
so the last day Psukim, the Chiddush is that's what we'll have to answer according to that pshat.
You're a Tzibor, even though you're an individual.
Exactly. Yeah. That's how we explain.
So one person would fulfill the whole Tzibor, then you could have.
He is the Tzibor.
He's
the Tzibor.
No, but he left the Tzibor.
No. He's still part. He's the last one.
Right. So is he fulfilling the chiyuv for the whole Tzibor? Or does every yachid now have the chiyuv of the Tzibor to fulfill?
Good point.
No, once they've all left, they've left. He's left behind, and if it happens to be the 8th, if it would have been Parshas Vayera, right, then there's nothing left.
Right.
If it happens to be the 8th psukim, he becomes the
It
tzibur.
doesn't matter
He's
where he
saying
is.
was he mostly the tzibur?
Was he?
That's a good right. It's not something we could get an answer to. Right, it might be a good alumnus in terms of what. It's a good. That gets down to the root of what exactly. If you can correct them, it depends how we learn pshat. If the Sibur is still there, if you need one at the beginning, that would depend on which school of thought we take in Rabbi Kiva Eger, and we could come up with an answer. Just one last kasha. There's a Chacham Svi. He has the Mordechai Shita is Yachid Koreh Osam. And he learns Yachid, the Talmud Chacham, the Rav, he gets Chasen Torah. So the question, the Chacham Svi says, what are you talking about? What bizyonis? What do you mean you give the Rav or the Talmud Chacham the last Shmona Psukim? Is that what you give the Rav? That's the lowest level Kedusha. Number one, either Yoshua wrote the last day Psukim, or Moshe wrote a B'dema. Like, what do you give it? Give them the Aseret HaDibros, give them the Shira. What bizyonis? What are you talking about? He rejects the Mordechai. That's not what maybe that's the meaning of those who give him Bereshit, because it's bizyonis. But they seem to pay a lot for. I guess they don't
Yeah.
accept.
That's the reason they give him Chassan Torah to the Rav
Oh,
now.
see.
That's the
Exactly.
You know the real reason.
Exactly. I guess the Chasam.
What are you saying? That's the reason. What is
That's why they give it to the Rav.
To the Rav.
It's the lowest.
The Chacham Tzvi, the Kashas, the
So why do they
Terek.
give him Maser Sedivus and Shira and Chazak?
Shuva and Mechaper on that.
No, the effort's not nicker. They could claim that they're doing it for they want to leave their option. No, but obviously that Chacham Tzvi didn't want to say that, therefore he leaves it a kasha. But either way, he says, what's a bizarre, what kind of ridiculous thing? Yochid Korah, some give it to the Rav. So he rejects it, he says, you don't give it to the Rav.
Did he get it?
Huh?
In his shul, did he get it?
Apparently, he must have got Chassan Bereshit. Or maybe he got it, it was Bizonis,
Right, yeah.
so he decided it's not for anyone else. I'm writing a tshuva on
And
it.
I can say that because if you see the brachas that go with the, Chosson Torah, I mean, they have such fantastic brachas, right? But
I know, but that's
think
something- I know, but that was the
As he gets called to the Torah, the Rishus.
Yeah, that was
I mean,
the,
that's-
right, I know,
that's-
but that's not part of, that's something
that's-
thrown in after, that's not,
Yeah, I
yeah.
doubt whether the expression Chosson Torah, Chosson Bereshis already existed in the time of the Chacham
Right.
Tzvi. I doubt that.
No,
So-
the Rishus went around time of Chacham Tzvi?
Huh?
You don't think this was Shus, the idea of the
That's all pretty recent.
Really?
It's all fairly
Rosh
recent.
Ish,
Civil
Alufe,
Torah itself is
supposed
so.
to generate money, those brachas.
Civil Torah itself is made in Chutz
Yeah,
La'aretz.
but Chacham
Yeah, but Simple Torah is
Simple Torah is the Gaon.
Yeah.
900. It was already.
by Chacham
Well,
Tzvi.
Yeah, but
That's
the
the earliest.
expression
The Gaonim already talk
Chosson
about
Bereshis, that's what I'm saying. the
Yeah, that's
expression.
something else. But
It doesn't seem to have
the
widespread.
Gaonim already had Simchas
Of course,
Torah.
there was somebody who
Some, but
finished and somebody who started.
But Chacham
But-
Tzvi is 16.
But the expression Chosson Torah, Chosson Bereshis is not found in the earliest form.
well, when do it go from three aliyahs to 7?
Or you mean from 1 year to 3 years?
Sorry,
From
from a 3-year
years to
cycle
1 year.
to
3-year cycle to 1 year cycle.
Yeah.
That it wasn't the same every place. That was a very gradual process about 1200 years ago.
Oh.
But some long before that and some much after that.
That was, therefore he rejects that practice, but the Klei Chemda, Mayor Dan Platsky, or Sefer Chumash, he wants to answer up the Chacham Tzvi's Kasha and explain why Dafka you do give it to the Rav, or what shot in the... So he says, really, that's the most chashiv part of the Torah. Instead of Pashas, we're looking at it in terms of Kedusha, it's the lowest level, because either Yoshua wrote it, or Moshe wrote it B'dema, tears, whatever. Comes on the Klei Chemda, he says, no, it's the most chashiv. Because number one, why are we doing it? Because we're showing, he writes that even though we lost Moshe Rabbeinu now, we always have to keep the Masorah, but he says like this. He says that it's the most closest connection between the Jewish people and God, because how does the rest of the Torah written? HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Moshe Omer B'Kosev. There was some interruptions in between. This is the highest level. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Moshe Kosev B'Dema. It was also to speak, without any interruptions. He wants to claim that's what Yachid Korah some, because you don't need it Tzibor. It's so chashuv in its own right. That's the pshat in the Rambam Yachid Korah some. It's the most important part of the Torah. It shows that even though we lost Moshe Rabbeinu and we not to give up hope, there was Yoshua, and every generation will have Rabbanim and Gedolim to take over. So that's so he wants to try to miyashav, answer up the Chacham Tzvi and it's Sefer and Chumash. That really no, it's the opposite. It's the highest level because
How is it less of an interruption?
No, he said because Moshe Omer, because there's no Moshe Omer. In other words, for the rest of it, it's Moshe Omer b'Kosev. So here it is Moshe Kosev b'Dema. So it's direct. It's as close as you could get the Shekhinah to the Jewish people. That's the question you asked last week. So according to the Klei Chemda, it's the holiest. The last 8 psukim. That's it. That's the ultimate. And that's why they give it to the Rav, I'm sure. That's what they have in mind, the Klei Chemda. And they give it not what the Chacham Tzvi has to say about Bizyonis. But that's how the Klei Chemda answers up the Kassos. To summarize, we went through the different shitas of the Shemona Psukim. Moshe Kosei B'Dema, Rashi, he was crying because he was going to die. We have the Marsha about avoiding Miksei Keshikra. He didn't say it, but he wrote it indirectly. We have the Grai Le'elu Divrokim Chayim, from the word Meduma. Moshe wrote it in its pristine state, and Yeshua came along and finished it. Then we had Yachid Koreos, and we had Rashi, no Hosafis. According to Rabbeinu Meshulam, the Ola himself has to do the reading. The Mordechai, the rabbi does it. He gets the Aliyah. The Rashash, you can't repeat it over again. And the Rambam, you don't need a minyan. We understood the Rayevitz's question is the Din Sibor, where did it go? And therefore, perhaps, by the rest of the Torah, you can even, if you start off with the minyan, you still have to have at least 6 remaining. But by the last 8 psukim, even if you have 1 or 2 remaining, it's okay. And we got into whether Kriyas Torah needs a minyan because it's Dover Shabbat Kedusha or not. Maybe because the reenactment of Mayim Harasina, that's the pshat in the Rambam. That you don't need a minyan because since Moshe Rabbeinu didn't teach it publicly, so therefore we don't have to do it. And then we had the Chacham Tzvi is, what do you mean? It's the lowest level. The death of Moshe Rabbeinu, why is that a cover? Why are you giving it for Chassan Torah? And the Kleicham says, no, it's the Nebek of Apol. We have the Masorah, basically it's the most direct link between the Jewish people and HaKadosh Baruch Hu.